Oh, hello. Didn't see you beam in there. Hey everybody, Ketwolski here, checking in with another one of our hashtag Lower Decks episode review videos. Today, of course, we are going to be talking about Season 1, Episode 4, Moist Vessel. As with all of my review videos, I'm going to be talking about a bunch of the things that I really enjoyed about this episode, followed up by some of the things I may or may not have liked, and I'm going to wrap the whole thing up with some theories about some things that may or may not be happening with the rest of this season. So overall, up front, I did really enjoy this episode. It was kind of the most interesting one that I've experienced so far, and we are, of course, only barely halfway through the first season. We're quite not there yet. You know, there's 10 total, so we're on episode 4. So this was the most interesting to me because it showcased two things very, very clearly to me, which is number one, they are hardcore leaning into the soft reset in between each episodes. And number two is the fact that I don't really know these characters all that much. This one really expanded on all 4 of our main Lower Decks crew members in ways that kind of were a little bit unexpected. You know, Rutherford didn't get too much to do in this particular episode. The kind of things that were going on were really focused on Mariner and really Tendi with a little bit of Boimler in there. But everyone was acting in ways that I was kind of unprepared for, which initially, when I first watched it, I was like, these things kind of seem a little inconsistent. I'm not really sure I understand what's going on, but I watched this episode several times back to back because my initial reaction was kind of like, I don't really know. But after watching it several times, this one is much different in tone than any of the other episodes that we've had up to this point. And there's a lot of things happening that I really actually enjoyed after spending some time really critically thinking about what it was that I was consuming here. This is definitely the most different episode in comparison to the season premiere to this one. These two are very drastically different in a lot of different elements and different ways, and I really enjoyed that. And the characters themselves, we've only known them for now 4 episodes, and I kind of thought I had them pretty well pegged and kind of assumed how a lot of their character arcs were going to develop throughout the rest of the season. And this episode showed me that not only do I not know these characters very well, but also that their character arcs may develop much differently than I originally had theorized or even expected. So right off the bat, we have the Generation ship, which is beautifully designed, and it is enormous, and I really, really enjoyed it. I thought the cool designs of the whole thing, both interior and exterior, were very interesting. I like the idea of this Generation ship. It's not the first time we've dealt with Generation ships inside of Star Trek, by no means, so this is kind of something that we've treaded before, but I, of course, love the idea, love the design of the ship. It looked very cool, and I like seeing the USS Merced, which is essentially a sister ship, or, you know, I guess you could say just a variant style or a different mission focused of the USS Cerritos. They look obviously the same. They are both California class starships, but this one, of course, has the blue strip on there and is more blue, which is science focused, as opposed to the Cerritos, which has the yellow stripe, which is more ops focused, potentially even engineering, depending on kind of the way you look at that. So I loved all the factoids there of having the 2 different style California ships and the Generation ship. Beautiful shot, well designed. I loved it. Of course, one of the key elements in this episode is the establishments of the A and the B plot, and we get both right up front, right out of the gate, which is this whole situation with the USS Merced, which we are seeing the Durango, Captain Durango, who has kind of a rivalry relationship with the captain of the Cerritos, and they are both towing the Generation ship back to a starbase in order to kind of get some repairs on it or whatever they're doing with it in order to continue on with its mission that they were supposed to be doing for that Generation ship to begin with. And then, of course, we get the B plot of the setup between the captain and her daughter, Ensign Mariner, and their whole kind of dynamical growth throughout the entire episode, where the captain is trying to get her to leave the ship and resign her commission on the Cerritos, but she doesn't want to, so there's a lot of back and forth there, and that's primarily the focus of it. So it's kind of not clear which one is supposed to be the A and the B plot. In my opinion, I think probably, now that I'm thinking about it, the A plot should be the captain and Mariner, with the B plot being the whole situation with the Generation ship and Captain Durango, who is a Tellarite, fantastically designed. I loved it, and he acts super Tellarite in this episode. I love that. And I guess you could say we also have a little tiny C plot, which is with Tendi and the Ascension guy, is who I'm going to call him because that's what he would like to be known as, is the Ascension guy, which we'll get to the Ascension guy here in a bit. But those are kind of the plots that are laid out very early on in the episode. So one of the things that definitely kind of, I guess, stood out to me in this specific episode is there are a lot of throughputs throughout the entire thing. A lot of things are set up in the first couple of minutes that are then connected throughout the rest of the episode. And the very first one that I noticed was the sarcastic Vulcan salute joke, which we got here with Mariner, and then we also got it later on with Boimler, which I thought was kind of funny. And initially it's not that big of a deal because it's just kind of like whatever, like they're playing the same joke twice, it's kind of whatever. But I thought it was interesting because there are several instances in this episode, which we'll talk about, of things that were set up and paid off several times throughout it, which I really enjoyed, that kind of attention to detail. There was a lot of callbacks within itself, which is great. I mean, this show is kind of built on references to Star Trek, and now they're just going ahead to meta-reference themselves in the same episode, which I really like. I thought that was kind of clever. So one of the things I'm definitely starting to really enjoy is my man, Boimler. He's got the hip movement. Okay, we saw him do the hips in I think it was the second episode where he was on the Klingon planet kind of looking for the ambassador. And then we also got him doing the river dance in episode 3. And now he's dancing again in episode 4. My boy's got some moves, and I hope that we see him dance even more throughout the rest of the season. This guy is not a stiff. He's got the moves. Another setup that kind of got paid off later on is this little sandcastle thing that the Ascension guy had built inside of his quarters right as he was about to ascend. Apparently he'd been laying that for a number of years, which then Tendi destroyed. But the design in there is actually the same kind of depiction that he turns into at the end of the episode, where he kind of ascends into just pure energy. So I like the fact that they set that up right there in front of you, and then they go right back to it again at the end of the episode. Really well done. I really enjoyed that. Another thing that I thought was kind of funny was the way that Tendi just asks for room temperature colorful sand, that it just kind of drops out of the replicator. I don't know why. I just expected it to kind of like appear, but I mean, it was kind of funny the way it just kind of fell from the top of it and just landed on her hands. It was, I don't know, I thought that was really funny. So obviously one of the things that they call attention to in this episode is how disgusting the holodecks kind of are. And, you know, they bleep out this sequence here with Ransom talking about what it was that Mariner was cleaning out of the holodecks. And I'll leave that up to your imagination as to what it was he was talking about. But yeah, I really enjoyed the fact that they kind of just draw attention to the fact that the holodeck is kind of nasty and a little creepy. They go into that heavily, you know, the sexual aspect about that, you know, in the Orville episode where they have a holodeck and there's like a big orgy or whatever in the Orville episode. But I like how they're kind of calling into that as well in this episode. Another really great setup is the whole Ransom doing the Riker standing pose on random chairs and random objects. He's doing it here in the captain's chair office thing. And then he does it again on the captain's chair on the bridge where he's just got his knee up and he's just doing that Riker pose maneuver. He's done it in previous episodes, but in this one, he did it twice, and I really enjoyed kind of, again, that throughput, the setup and the payoff of the double joke, the double reference inside of the episode. I thought that was really clever. And of course, I love the fact that he's just doing the Riker stance maneuver that he's known for, uncomfortably putting his leg up behind people on furniture items that Jonathan Frakes did. I don't know why he did that, but that was his thing. And I like the fact that they're playing that up very heavily with Ransom and that they're kind of really calling attention to the fact that it's just a big joke. So after Mariner gets promoted, she has to sit there and listen to the senior officers discuss what kind of chairs they're going to be putting inside of the senior conference room. And I don't know if the person who wrote this episode has experienced these kinds of conversations before, but this specific conversation and these elements there, it really spoke to my soul. I've been in those conversations. I've been in conversations about chairs. And it was really funny to me. This show continues its kind of commentary on, I guess, work and kind of relationships between managers and employment and just offices in general. And I like the fact that they're kind of calling some attention to those kinds of references and jokes. And obviously, for a younger audience, it may just be funny in general, just because it's kind of silly that they're talking about chairs. But for older people who have been in the job sites for a long time and who've worked in offices, you know that conversations like this happen, whether it's chairs or tables or desks or what colored blinds they need to get for the office or the carpet color and all that weird stuff. These conversations do happen, and it definitely spoke to me. So the captain singing scat was really good, but I loved this guy's United Federation of Characters one-man show. I cut up laughing all the 4 times I watched this episode, I cut up laughing every single time. It was so funny, and that's why I did the intro with that, because I thought that was probably the best joke of this entire episode to me. Just when he turned around, and it was just, and the feeling that Mariner gets when she's got this weird one-man show poetry death slam or whatever, and it was perfect. I thought that joke was really funny. So talking a little bit more about the C plot, which is the whole situation with Tendi and the Ascension guy, where she ruins his ascension apparently, but it turns out she didn't because he wasn't actually going to be able to ascend to begin with and all that stuff. Honestly, on the first couple of watch throughs, I wasn't super on the first watch through really, maybe the first and second one, I wasn't super interested in that subplot. But as I watched it more, I actually really started to enjoy some of the weird things that Tendi was doing by saying that she was going to assault him with all sorts of religion, and Rutherford being like, that's not how that works. And then she's burning the sage, and she's got the crazy hat on, and she's trying to get him to do all sorts of weird religious things to get him, the Ascension guy, to like her, and not necessarily apologize, but so that they can kind of reconcile, which was also a really great plot point for her character, which is that she struggles with the idea of people not liking her. So she tries really hard to get this guy who doesn't like her, and even calls her a villain in the episode, to like her. And I actually did enjoy that. After watching it a couple of more times, I started to pick up on a lot of the little jokes that she was throwing around, and kind of side comments and kind of things that were happening that I actually did really enjoy towards the end of my fourth watch through. So Boimler and Rutherford didn't get too much to do in this episode, but I did enjoy his subplot, Boimler's subplot of like turning into a bad boy, and then he gets caught like saying like some funky like weird stuff, like they're gonna get what they deserve up on there on the bridge, and then somebody's like, what are you talking about? He goes, nothing, it's Moriarty, Great callback, great reference there. And then he like goes into like this creepy little, I don't know, Ferengi stance almost, which I thought was really funny. I really enjoyed that. And of course, I liked how he showed up later on the bridge in the crisis situation, and then he drops the coffee on Ransom, and he's like, what the heck are you doing? I loved that. That was great. I thought that was perfect comedic timing, and they could have gone a couple of different ways with how he was going to screw up whatever the operations were on the bridge, but it made sense that he did it right at the beginning, because I don't think Boimler's character would have continued to screw around if there was actual life and death situations happening. So they played that really smartly by having him do it right at the start of that and then not really going back to it. And so I thought that was really well done. So one thing I do want to mention is all of the effects of the, I guess you could say the substance, the foreign substance that was turning the inorganic material of the ships into organic life forms. All of that animation and all those effects were so well done. I struggle to understand why people say that the animation in the show is not good, or it's cheap, or it's terrible, or whatever. If you look at this episode and you see all of the detail of the, all of those different kinds of effects happening all at once with the water and the rocks and the crystals and the explosions and all those things, it was so well done. I absolutely enjoyed it so very much. I thought it was really well done. I love this particular shot here of Durango's ship just kind of all jacked up, covered in this material there. It was really well designed. I love the coloring scheme as well. It popped really well. It was really eye-catching. I just really enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed the animation of the show quite a lot. So one of the things that kind of startled me a little bit, which again goes back to that whole situation with not really understanding who these characters are all that much, in a good way because they're still very new to us, is when Tendi kisses the Ascension guy, which I was completely surprised by and was kind of taken aback. I thought they were going to be playing up her relationship with Rutherford a little bit more, but now I'm feeling like there may be a situation where Rutherford's kind of feeling her, but she maybe not necessarily is feeling him, which again kind of goes away from the plot point that I thought we were going to get. And that kind of connects back a little bit to Boimler's situation, where he kind of turns into the bad boy, where it isn't necessarily what I thought. I thought that he may not ever try to be the bad boy. He obviously wants to get promoted, and he's willing to kind of do what he needs to do in order to do that. But he sees what's happening with Mariner, and he gets a little jealous, and so he tries to emulate her behavior in order to get ahead as well. And he realized that wasn't really a good idea. So there was a lot of little moments like that in this episode that really showcases the fact that these characters are still very new to us, and we don't really know all that much about them, but in a good way. And then we're still kind of exploring the depths of who they are. They're not necessarily these one-dimensional character archetypes that were kind of flow through the scripts and the plots and stuff like that. So I really enjoyed this Tendi moment here, and of course the situation with Boimler. I thought, again, those really are starting to expand on our lower decks crew. Another really hilarious moment was the whole entire Ascension thing, where he's like burning and kind of like in pain about it, because of course turning from a physical being into an energy being would probably hurt, and I like the fact that they kind of call attention to that idea, that it's actually a bit painful. And of course I love the smiling koala joke. I don't know where that's coming from. Maybe somebody understands that reference, and you do throw that up in the comments down below. I thought that was freaking hilarious, super funny. I really just gut laughed at that moment when that koala was standing there and he said he could see Abraham Lincoln, and I thought that was really great, really super funny, really enjoyed those moments. Another moment that they kind of set up right at the beginning of this episode was the way that the captain says the word censor. And of course, that ties back into the end of this episode where she mispronounces the word censor as sense-or, which is to tie into the way the admiral is saying it. I don't know if they did that intentionally or not. I feel like they did because it's right at the beginning and right at the end, and they kind of showcase to us and tell us, like, this is actually the way that the captain does say the word censor, so that at the end of the episode, we are also in on the joke that Mariner's kind of having with her mom and the whole situation happening there with the admiral. Really good attention to detail there. Again, another fantastic callback within the episode. Super smart on their part. All right, guys and gals, that does wrap up my episode review of the things that I enjoyed. So there was something that I actually did not enjoy about this episode, and it was just one simple thing, which was the cold open with the yawning gag, which tied directly into the premise of the entire episode. I like the idea of the cold openings being something a little bit different and not directly related to the entire episode as a whole in terms of the story structure, and kind of even going as far as to establish some of the plot within the cold open. I like the fact that they kind of kept it separate in the previous episodes. This one did it a little bit differently, and that's just something I personally didn't like. I know that some shows like Brooklyn Nine-Nine, for instance, sometimes does that, where the cold open does directly connect into the episode. I don't like it there either, by the way, so I don't like it here. That's just a personal preference of mine, but it is something that I did not like about this episode. All right, so now I want to talk quickly about some theories here, which is, who were those beings on the generation ship? It was very interesting that they did not show who they were. Now, if you take a screenshot of those characters and kind of brighten it up, you can kind of see and make out a specific, well, I think a specific alien race. I'm not going to showcase it here just in case it turns out to be a huge spoiler for an episode later on, and I don't want to get people upset or whatever it is, and I don't want to necessarily break people's imaginations as to what they may be, but I have a current theory about it. But I thought it was interesting that they did not showcase who those species and what that race was inside of the kind of containment tubes. So it makes me think that potentially the generation ship may come back later on, or we may get a follow-up, a potential second contact mission, which is the job of the Cerritos to engage with those folks on the generation ship. So if Starfleet wakes everybody back up, it's not necessarily going to be a first contact situation. It may actually just go straight into a second contact where they start to establish all sorts of different communications and formal relations with them with the United Federation of Planets. So we may go back to that race later on and see what they were all about. So hopefully we actually get some follow-up there. That'd be kind of cool. All right, guys and gals, that does wrap up my episode review for Moist Vessel. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I'm absolutely desperate to hear what you thought about this. I'm curious to hear, your kind of feedback is. For me, I watched the episode the first time, and again, my feelings weren't so great. They were just kind of so-so in comparison to the other episodes, but the more I watched it, the more I did appreciate a lot of the elements that they were doing there. The whole dynamic of Mariner and her mom's relationship was obviously a huge focal point of the episode, and I think that might resonate very well with a younger audience, or maybe individuals who are much more closer, have a more tumultuous relationship with their own mothers. So I feel like that was kind of a different shift in tone and a different shift in focus. The jokes were kind of sidelined for that main story focus, which was an interesting choice, but I am curious to see what you guys thought about that. So get your ideas up down below. Tell me what you thought about this episode, and are you excited to see episode 5 and 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 and into season 2? Get those comments up down below, and we'll go ahead and get the conversation started. Live long and prosper, my trickies!